Hi, I am really excited about meeting with you again and having this discussion on applied spirituality and spirit talks again with you. Our topic for today is prayers, and then we will talk about surrender.
Yeah, it's I'm really looking forward again to this conversation. It was so enlivening discussing topics of applied spirituality last time. Um, I was reflecting on what really surrender means to me. And I was reminded of a beautiful thing that His Holiness Radhanath Swami once told in a lecture, recently, actually, in a lecture in India. He mentioned that surrender is a moment to moment thing. So it's
Mm,
not something that we say, I'm surrendered,
yeah,
it's and
for
it's done.
eternity. Yeah.
And it's done. It's not finished. But
Mm,
rather surrender is a moment to moment thing. It's
wow.
every moment that we have a choice whether we are surrendering or we're choosing to hold back.
Hmm.
So in everything that we're doing in our life,
Yeah.
it's very profound. It really deeply touched me. Actually, when he said it in such an introspective way
Mm.
that I felt it really, really touched me. And that was one thing that really stood out for me in that lecture. And I was thinking, oh my goodness, it makes so much sense if we're talking about a moment to moment thing. Because Krishna says, right, in the Bhagavad Gita, that we have a choice. He's given us the free will. People say, okay, if everything is predestined, then what is really our role? Our role is that Krishna has given us this free will. He has given us this choice whether we choose to surrender or we choose to hold back.
Every moment, like you said. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, every moment. It's a moment to moment thing. And I was just reflecting on this very point and this wonderful personality in the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam that remind us of what it means to be a moment to moment surrender. Do you remember the pastime of Vritrasura?
Yeah, yeah.
Comes.
It's a very heart touching but truly transformational story from Srimad Bhagavatam. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah. So Vritrasura actually, the birth that he received as Vritrasura, of course, there's a lot of backstory, which probably maybe you can share a little later. But Vritrasura was born to Twashtamuni. And Twashtamuni actually, he he was, when he gave birth to Vishwarup, his son Vishwarup. Vishwarup's mother
Mhm.
was from the family of demons. And Twashtamuni, of course, he was, a demigod. And he came from that lineage, from the Devas lineage. Whereas his wife was from the demon race. So
Oh,
when
wow.
Vishwarup, when he was performing the yagya for Indra, his brother, when he was offering oblations into the fire, he was offering oblations for the demigods, for the devas, loud and clear, but he was also offering prayers for the demon race
Because it
simultaneously.
for his mother. Wow. Okay.
For his maternal side of the family.
Hmm.
So he was actually showing respect to both sides of the family. But when Indra found out, he became so angry that he chopped off his three heads.
Wow.
Vishwarup had three heads, extremely learned scholar, his own brother. And he chopped off his heads. And because of that, Twashtamuni became extremely angry.
Naturally.
Yeah, of course. And he decided that, I'm going to perform a a sacrifice, a fire sacrifice, and have a son that will kill Indra. That will be so powerful, more powerful than Indra, and he can kill Indra.
Mm-hmm.
But you know how we've seen those funny memes of how language, you've seen those English memes.
Yeah.
Sometimes use
You say
English
something,
language.
it comes out sound like something else.
Right. But also just because of the punctuation,
Yeah,
it
that's true.
means
Yes.
something,
Yes,
right?
yes. Yeah, they're
So
very hilarious.
that's yeah, that's exactly what happens to Twashtamuni. Twashtamuni, he actually says, Indra Shatru Vardastva.
Mm-hmm.
What it really means, Indra's Shatru Vardastva. So it means Indra's enemy may you become powerful.
Mm-hmm.
But what
So you
happens
will
is,
Indra. Yeah.
yes, so when he's offering the sacrifice and he's giving these blessings, he says, Indra Shatru Vardastva.
Mm-hmm.
May Indra's enemy
Mm-hmm.
become powerful.
Mm-hmm.
But what he does is, he says Indra and he pauses. Shatru Vardastva.
Oh.
So it means Indra, may you become more powerful than your enemy.
Oh, wow. Just a small punctuation mark.
Just a small pause.
Pause. Yeah, you're right.
And that made such a difference that Vritrasur was born. He was actually conceived with having to kill Indra,
Hmm.
having to have a child who was going to be more powerful than Indra.
Mm-hmm.
But when he was conceived and he was born from this fire sacrifice, he was born to be killed by Indra.
By Indra.
That Indra will be more powerful than you.
Mm. Oh.
Now just imagine, Vritrasur knows this,
Yeah.
right? And so does Twashtamuni know this.
Mm-hmm.
The whole purpose of this yagya was to have a son that is going to kill Indra. However, the opposite of what they desired actually happened.
Hmm.
But what really happens? What does Vitrasur actually do? Does he say, okay, you know what? I'm out of the game? No, he doesn't do that. He actually says he goes along, even though he knows that he will be killed. He just continues.
Mm.
He continues with what he's supposed to do, with the purpose of why he was born.
Yeah. And just reading these prayers, even he had this apparent disadvantage of being in a demon body and being assured to be killed by Indra. Even then, on the battlefield, he had transcended the whole meaning of winning or losing. He had transcended of victory in a battle. He had transcended material desire, so he was free. He was, like we're speaking about surrender, he was free. It wasn't like he was giving in, oh, I'm destined to be killed. But he literally gave in. He literally rose up, sorry. And he was like, okay, I am above all this. And he was spiritually so powerful and so empowered. This completely flips the script. Like when I was reading, I was like, wow, he's on a battlefield. And Indra, who has God by his side, Vishnu was on his side. He had this astra called Vajra, which was supposed, like, he hits Vritrasura with this weapon. Vritrasura would die, and he did die because of that weapon. And but Indra was always so anxious and perturbed, like usually a conditioned soul is. But Vritrasura, even having this apparent disadvantage, he was so free, so peaceful, and yet so the success was his, even though he lost the battle. So I really love their pastime in the pages of Bhagavatam.
Actually, it's so wonderful that you brought that up. There's a wonderful quote by Krishna Das, and he actually mentions that the ultimate act of power is surrender. So,
Ultimate to power.
when
That's
you
powerful.
yeah, when you're sharing this starring contrast between Indra, who knew that this Vritrasura is going to be killed by me. He's got all the advantages, like you said, his weapon is right there. He has the support from the Lord. And on the other side, Vritrasura knew he was going to be killed,
Yeah.
but he's there on the battlefield fighting. So Indra chops off his one arm and he lifts up the weapon with the other arm and he
Hmm.
starts to fight. He doesn't say, okay, you know what, let me just give up.
Hmm.
He
Yeah.
still decides.
Yes.
So
Yes.
can you imagine the
Yes.
power he
Yes.
had
Yes.
was not from the advantages he had, it was from his surrender.
Hmm.
The
Yeah.
very quote that Krishnadas shares, that the ultimate act of power is surrender.
Actually, I want to underscore that point you said that he chopped off his hand, but he was still fighting. And we are also talking about surrender. So sometimes people think they're two different things. Surrender means relinquish everything and not fight, give up. But really, surrender does not mean passivity. It means to try your level best, which Vritrasura was doing despite knowing the consequences of his fighting the war, and still like leaving the rest to God's will. And yeah, so that is very powerful. It's very
Yeah,
powerful.
yeah,
I also
absolutely.
like the point you said, you were mentioning about Maharaj, His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj, mentioning moment to moment. And isn't it true that moment to moment we have to feed the Indra within and the Vritrasura within us? The Indra within us is the ego, the fear of control, lording it over the material. He was so anxious. He was attached to his throne, his power, his influence. Yet he was so fearful. And then Vritrasura on the other side is that small person inside us, which is like, okay, I want to surrender. I can't do this on my own. There's someone greater than me, and I'm okay. I just want to surrender. So moment to moment, we have to surrender. We have to either feed the Indra within or the Vritrasura within.
That's so beautiful. Really, really, that was a very wonderful realization, actually. And when you said that, continuing in same story of Vritrasur, one arm is chopped off. He takes the weapon from the other arm. He says, I'm still going to surrender. Second arm is chopped off. He's fighting with his trunk of the body, and his head is chopped off. He's still using his body as much as possible to fight. And at that moment, Indra is becoming so afraid that, my goodness, this person is so powerful.
Yeah,
And over there, Vitrasur starts to speak with him,
with
starts
all
to have
the
a,
yeah.
yes, he's having a dialogue with Indra. And he says, Indra, why are you scared?
Can you imagine someone who's losing and about to die?
Because he had surrendered to the will.
Hmm.
He had complete surrender. I was just right before I read this quote by Oprah Winfrey, and she says that surrender isn't about giving up. Like you
Hmm.
said, it's not about being passive. So
Hmm.
surrender isn't about giving up. It's about letting go of what you cannot control.
True. Yeah,
So
that summarizes their pastime in this quote.
yeah, and if you just tie these two quotes, actually three quotes in, surrender isn't about giving up, it's about letting go of what you cannot control. And that is actually the ultimate power.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. You nicely combine both of them. Yeah.
But it has to be a moment to moment thing,
That's amazing. You did that. Yes.
isn't
Yeah.
it? Because
Yeah.
it's moment to moment, we have to realize that there are going to be things that we cannot control.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean we become passive.
Yes.
We
Yes.
try our best and leave the rest, you know.
Yeah.
So try our best and then leave the rest, because the Lord has a plan. You know,
Definitely.
the Lord
Def-
definitely has a plan. And Vritrasur was so clear about that. And that's why in this conversation, he's telling Indra, come on, get up. You have nothing to lose. It's already
Yeah.
predestined. You're going to kill me. You're going to be victorious. Just come on and play your role.
Mm.
It's like
Yes.
I'm playing my role. So
Yes.
Vritrasura is, boosting the morale of Indra, even though he's in such a disadvantageous situation because of the power of surrender,
Mm.
the strength he received because of accepting what he could
Mm.
not control. Even though his will was something else, but he accepted what he could not control and he became so powerful. That is such an uplifting
It
thought.
is. It is
You
very, very profoundly transformational. It is like when you see them, and of course, in our daily lives, we are not on a celestial battleground, or we are not fighting demons or devatas, right? So, for us to be real, we are dealing with job security, relationships, money. We're dealing with these real life problems. But if we shift our attitude, how of really seeing how Ritrasura was conducting himself in the battlefield for these small things, like nothing is in our control. We always think that there is an illusion of control. We have everything. My job is in our control, but is it really? My relationships are in my control. It can be for very positive cases, but again, time sets them apart through death. And nothing is our control. We might be exercising, we might be, like we were speaking last time, like manifesting our goals for New Year's, like health wise, but something falls apart, our health falls apart.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I was just thinking how we really bring in these lessons in our daily lives. I think we need to shift our questions, like like from what am I gaining from this, to what am I learning from this, how am I growing through this. We have to shift our definition of success, so-called success, as well. Yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, definitely. Especially from this wonderful story about Vritrasur, I
Mm-hmm.
think, and from what Radhanath Maharaj mentioned, that it's a moment to moment thing.
Mm-hmm.
That means bringing those aspects in our life, in our
Mm-hmm.
day to day life. It could mean we have expectations from our jobs, from our relationships, from our friendships, from our services, from our everything in life. We have expectations and we put in our best. So it's not like we're sitting back and we're giving up,
No. Yeah.
things aren't working. We're trying and we're trying to do the right thing, which we
Mm-hmm.
spoke about manifesting, taking
Mm-hmm.
care of things, applying things, doing things, hoping for progress in all aspects of our life.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, where does the real strength come from? It comes from surrender. And when I say surrender, is exactly what Oprah Winfrey, very wonderful, powerful lady who has achieved so much. What does she say? Is surrender isn't about giving up. It's about letting go of what you cannot control. So there's going to be several things in the day that we have perfectly planned, but something will pop up that is not in our control. And
True.
how we deal with that is going to truly tell us how much we're surrendered. And we got to be our own judge. You know,
Yes.
it's these little things, like exactly like mentioned, that it's not like we're going to be on a battlefield.
Hmm.
We got our own battlefield,
Yeah.
individual battlefield on a
Yeah.
day-to-day basis. And there could be several things that could be, you know, testing limits for us, could be like putting us to the edge, maybe some conversations, maybe some situations. But how we deal with things that we cannot control actually, in my opinion, tells me how surrendered I am,
Hmm. Yes.
tells me how much work I really have to truly feel surrendered. And it's also these pages in Srimad Bhagavatam, they remind us of such personalities that they could do it. How? because they figured out that it's important to let go of what you cannot control.
Hmm. It
And
reminds me of His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj's one quote where he says, which you mentioned, that he said something along, I'm just paraphrasing, but he said, the test of someone's true character is how they respond to a situation when they're provoked. And every time that's like my, that's like, it's like a litmus test for me. Okay, somebody is really irking my nerves, or the situation is getting out of my control. How do I react? Oh, then I always keep remembering his this one line that, okay, now it's the true test. So Vritrasura's and Indra's fight was also not just a story or a pastime about fight. It was actually a spiritual test that Vritrasura was going through. He passed it with flying colors, like we say, and I want to just give a little bit of backstory of how he landed up here and how he has such a glorious end, and his life story was so glorious. So, as we say again, Radhanath Maharaj says that when a body is born, that's not when a soul is born. Soul
sure.
goes way back, way back. We can't count; it's eternal. We don't know the start and the end. So Vritrasura was, in his past life, he was born as King Chitraketu. He was very pious, very righteous king. He was a ruler. He was a king. So apparently he should have all the happiness in the world, and he had. He was very happy, and he was pious. He was a devotee of the Lord. But eventually, he wanted to have a son. I mean, all any king would want to have a son who can carry forward their legacy, right? So he wanted to have a son, and then slowly he started marrying so that he could have a son. So he started marrying. He had one queen, and then two and three, and then he wanted to have a son. They were not able to provide him with a son, and slowly he started marrying more and more queens, and he reached till a point where he was frustrated. He was so disappointed. And Gayatri, it really reminds me of our manifestation. Where we were thinking that only so much we can manifest in this material world.
Yeah.
There are consequences of our material desires as well. He was a king; he had it all, everything, the wealth, proper family, everything. But
Mhm.
one thing, just a small thing, was bothering him, and it made him just fully ignore whatever he had and just focus on that one suffering he had, which was not able to have a son. And then eventually he married a queen, and he was able to have a son through her, and he was happy. And he actually got a boon from this Muni called Angira Muni, who said, okay, you will have a son, but he warned him that, remember, there will be happiness that the son will bring. Obviously, we know that the happiness of carrying forward his kingdom, but there will also be some moroseness. There will be reason to lament. And he was like, yeah, okay, having a son, lamentation is okay. Sons are, he said that, the son, that's fine. It's okay. It's just a son. What disappointment can I get? He won't, yeah, he won't listen to me. He would have his own mischievous tendencies. But then Angira Muni didn't say anything, and he left. And then he had this queen who, through her, he had the son. That made all the other queens so envious of this queen, because this queen was thrown, with maximum, showered with maximum attraction, maximum, the king was pampering her, of course, because she had the son.
Attention.
Yeah, see, she had the maximum attention. And then all the other queens were so envious to the point, to this is an extreme point, but they were so envious to this point that they couldn't handle this, and they wanted to poison the son.
The
And they
newborn child. Yeah.
Yeah, and they were successful. They gave him the poison, and the son died. And this was the reason the Angina Muni had said that he will bring you lamentation. And that now, when King Chitraketu got to know about this, he was very morose. He was very unhappy. He had really, it encapsulated him so much that he could not function. And Narad Muni and Angira Muni, they came and just to pay their regular visits, and they saw that the situation happened. And they just started talking philosophically that death is just a journey. It's the soul is continues from one body to the other. I think in a moment they also brought the son back to life for just a moment, where the son came back and said, and Chitraketu was very happy, and he's like, "Oh, my son is back," and he was like, "Which father are you? Which life? I have had so many fathers and mothers," and that was a turning point in his life, and he completely surrendered, and he was totally devoted, and he knew that this life is not about just gaining material acquisitions, and he became very, very advanced in his spiritual journey. Now again, this king, he lost his son. The son went back. Now he is happy, and he is enlightened by this knowledge of devotional knowledge, that life really continues on from soul to soul, not from
Mhm.
body to body. And then he was just traveling, and he happened to just pass by this great assembly, where Lord Shiva and Parvati, they were sitting, and Lord Shiva was addressing to this august assembly of sages, and he was addressing about detachment, devotion to Lord, and while Parvati, his wife, was sitting on his lap, and just casually, like, he was appreciative. He was not making fun, but he was very appreciative. But he just chuckled, he just smiled, and
That's
Lord
because of his relationship with Lord Shiva.
Okay.
He had more of a friendship kind of a relationship
Ah,
with
yes.
Lord Shiva. So took the liberty of joking with him. Oh, you're talking about detachment,
With your
but you
wife.
have your wife sitting on your lap. So to him, he was like, actually, he meant it in a way that only you can talk about
Oh yeah, you're
detachment with
right.
your wife sitting on your lap, which
Yes.
actually meant that it's only Lord Shiva you can really do that.
Mm.
It's
Yes.
actually an
Yeah.
appreciation, but it was perceived by Mother Parvati, like you mentioned, as a criticism,
Yeah. She
as
did
a
not.
criticism, right? And that's why
That's why
he.
she gave him the curse, that, okay, you're making fun of this thing, and in your next life you'll be a demon. You'll be this demon, this mountain-sized demon, and you will also die. And that's how he took birth as Vritrasura in his next life. So again, this is his entire story. He was a very devoted, very pious king who through his experience of losing his son, was self-realized, and then became even more connected to Lord. Yeah.
While you're telling me this, the backstory, and if you see a connection, he had moments of deep surrender even in his previous life.
Hmm.
Moments of surrender when he lost his child, a
Hmm.
newborn baby, not through an illness, but being killed by the rest of his family,
Hmm.
rest of his wives, who killed his newborn child. There was a choice. He had to surrender.
Hmm.
Then, when he was cursed by Mother Parvati, even at that time, the acharyas actually explain, great personalities explain, that he was powerful and he could counter curse or express his dissatisfaction. But what he chose to do is very willingly surrender and accept that it's not just important to be right, but it's also important to be perceived being right. So he
Hmm.
took that as a very corrective measure for himself. Again, it happens because of the power of surrender.
Hmm.
um, and he accepted it. He accepted this curse upon himself, and that's why he carries the spirit of
Hmm.
surrender from birth to birth. And in this life, as Vritrasur, he exemplifies, the whole mood of surrender and what it really means and how powerful you really become because of surrender.
Yeah, you're
And
right. It doesn't make you weak. It makes you powerful, which is,
yeah,
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 brilliant.
which is so it's so uplifting, because oftentimes people think that surrendering means susceptible to exploitation.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But surrendering means, of course, you do it with your intelligence. Surrendering means that you surrender to things that you cannot change. You accept them. You try your best and you leave the rest.
Hmm.
And That's what makes you powerful. It gives you strength to deal with situations that are inevitable in our lives, that are definitely going to happen. I was thinking maybe we can read a couple of his prayers,
Yeah.
because right after this whole episode, um, he actually, speaks beautiful prayers where he's expressing his heart. And I think that gives me an insight into what a really surrendered heart looks like.
Yes.
What are the contents of a surrendered heart? How do you get there? It's like you're making a brownie, but you really want to know what the ingredients are. So we're all striving. We're talking about having a surrendered heart. But what really you see in these four verses of his prayers is actually the contents of his heart.
Yeah, well, let's read it. I also want to just point out, like, when he's reading these prayers, Indra is chopping off his throat. He's cutting his throat. It takes him 1 year to cut his throat. It, yeah, I mean, like
Hard
Vaishishika
out.
Bhatt says, sometimes it's family show. We should not be talking about all this, but he's really chopped off his arms, and now he's, chopping his throat. It takes him 1 year because Indra is little and he's like huge, this monster. And in that mood, these prayers, they touch your heart, but it doesn't mean that somebody has to chop my throat for me to realize this. It means when in the middle of everything, our life, our battles of life, we can still surrender to Krishna. We can still surrender and, let go and rise up rather than giving in. So yeah, these prayers are amazing. Do you want to start?
Yeah. Actually, this comes in the sixth canto, 11th chapter, and I think it's the 24th verse. Maybe we can read the translation. So over
Mhm.
here, the chapter is actually entitled The Transcendental Qualities of Vritrasura. So it's actually talking about the contents of the heart, his transcendental qualities. He says, "O my Lord, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, will I again be able to be your servant? Be a servant of your eternal servants who find shelter only at your lotus feet." So basically, all he really wanted to do is be surrendered in a way that he's of service. So,
Hmm.
he figured this plan out, that actually the Lord is siding with Indra. He wants Indra to be successful, and I'm going to play my part on being defeated, because that's my role, and I'm being of full, complete service by doing my part.
Mhm.
So over
Yeah.
here, he's not saying, please engage me. What he's saying is, will I again be able to be your servant? Right now, I'm acting as your servant
Yeah.
by being
Yeah.
told, but
Yeah.
will I again be able to be your servant?
Mhm.
Servant of your eternal servants. O Lord of my life, may I again become their servant, so that my mind may always think of your transcendental attributes. My words always glorify those attributes, and my body always engage in the loving service of your Lordship.
Wow.
And like you mentioned, this is while his throat is being chopped off. This completely is the 3 points over here that he makes is mind, body, and words.
Mhm.
When we say, when somebody wants to surrender, you surrender through mind, body, and words.
Yes.
Exactly what he's doing, exactly what he's asking. Lord, I want to be of service to you. Please again engage me. How? That I may always think through my mind, I may always speak through my words, and through my body be physically engaged in your service.
Yeah.
Complete surrender through mind, body, and words.
All three engaged. Yeah.
Isn't that amazing?
It's amazing. Yeah. Yeah. It's giving us the practical tenets of how to surrender. Somebody would ask, how do I surrender? I mean, this is all philosophically sounding good, but mind, body, and words. Yeah, speech.
Engage your mind in such a way that you can find ways of surrendering, you know, engaging in spirituality in our lives. At the same time, speaking. Actually, we didn't even realize we've spent the last some half an hour engaging words. And then engage your physical body, do activities that connect us to spirituality. And I think that's so powerful. And that's what he's talking about. That's the contents of his heart. Did you want to
I
read
think
the
it's
next
talking so
verse?
much about service makes me believe that, I mean, we think happiness is comes from being special or achieving things in life, but it really comes from serving selflessly. Yeah, we don't have to do anything. We don't have to be the best in our material pursuits or even spiritual services. We just have to serve selflessly. I, I just love this point that he's underscoring, that service. I just want to sincerely serve through all the agents of my body, mind, and speech. It's a very
Yeah,
deep word.
it's interesting that you brought up the point that we don't necessarily have to be the best, but we have to try our best.
Yeah, yeah.
As long as we're trying our best, and it's not important to be the best.
Yes, yes. I think I was
But
trying to bring out the comparison between Indra. Again, Indra, he wanted to be the best by winning the war. So he was like, I want to kill Vritrasura and still secure my throne. But Vritrasura was doing his best despite knowing the consequences. So thank you for bringing the difference between both.
yeah, that is amazing. That is amazing. Would you like to read the next verse? I think it's a beautiful.
Sure. 25.
Yeah.
O my Lord, source of all opportunities, I do not desire to enjoy in Dhruvaloka, the heavenly planets, or the planet where Lord Brahma resides. Nor do I want to be the supreme ruler of all the earthly planets or the lower planetary systems. I do not desire to be master of the powers of mystic yoga, nor do I want liberation if I have to give up your lotus feet.
Now there's
Wow.
a big if. If I
Yeah.
have to give up your lotus feet, like
So that
it's like
was the main part, and the entire verse he's willing to reject. In everything in the verse, he's willing to reject.
yeah, it's like putting two things on a weighing scale, right?
True. Yeah. Yeah.
It's like putting things. So he's putting opportunities. It's putting
Desire to
opportunities
enjoy
for financial success, like Dhruvaloka, or good houses, or all kinds of things into
even
one.
liberation. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, into one scale. And then on the other side, he's saying that if I have to trade this with actually being surrendered to you, like have to give up your lotus feet over here truly means being surrendered to you,
Mm.
then all of this, really, it's too heavy a price to pay.
Yeah. And how easily he says that. I don't want any of those, just your lotus feet. So
Right. He says, I don't want any of this if I have to give up your feet.
mm,
If
true.
I have to give up your lotus feet.
Hmm.
I mean, all of
Yeah.
these things in itself are nice. Okay,
Yes. Yes.
great. But
Yeah.
if I have to trade them with your lotus feet, then it's too much of a price to pay.
Yeah. He doesn't
Who's
want
there?
anything in return for that. Yeah.
Yeah. That again shows true surrender,
Hmm.
because what I really want is I want to be surrendered.
Hmm.
If my surrender is going to cost me, if all of this is going to come at the price of me giving up surrender, then I don't need it and I don't want it.
I
You
think the
know,
central theme for this verse, which I thought while reading, was detachment. And Srimad Bhagavatam also says that in so many pastimes, in so many stories, that all our family, our job, our sense of security in our lives, they're good. We should serve them. It's not that we should recklessly give them away, but they are fallible soldiers. They will someday leave us. Our family will leave us. Job, we might lose our job. So the only person who's going to be with us is the Lord throughout our life and at the end of the life. So I think Vitasura was very spiritually mature to recognize this from his past life impression and also this life, that Yeah, I just want Krishna's lotus feet. Everything else is, if I have to trade in, I'm not going to trade for Krishna's lotus feet. Yeah.
Absolutely. Actually, he goes on in the verse 26 and he says, O lotus eyed Lord, as baby birds that have not yet developed their wings always look for their mother to return and feed them. As the small calves tied with ropes wait anxiously the time of milking, when they will be allowed to drink the milk of their mothers, or as a morose wife whose husband is away from home always longs for him to return and satisfy her in all respects, I always yearn for the opportunity to render direct service unto
It's
you.
one of my favorite verses from amongst his prayers.
Mm. Beautifully, where he mentions, he gives the comparison of someone really helpless and really longing. When you give an example of a baby bird being dependent on the mother, when you give an example of a calf being dependent on the mother, when you're talking about a wife who is waiting for their husband, not just out of dependence, but also out of love,
Hmm.
uh, then it's to him, he's talking about that may I also have similar earning in my heart for you,
Yeah,
you know, that is clubbed with dependence and clubbed with love. I think that's so beautiful when you give examples like this,
which you can
because
relate to. Yeah,
yeah, because it's absolutely beautiful that sometimes we're afraid of being dependent because of the feeling of being exploited, you know. Oftentimes, dependency is not very attractive as a virtue,
yeah.
because it's like who you're being dependent unto dictates how you're going to feel. But
Hmm.
when we're talking about dependence on someone like the Lord, who truly understands and satisfies you, then here the dependency is actually connected to surrender.
Yeah.
Because He's your true well wisher.
Hmm.
He's your true well wisher, not just because um, not just because he wants to be a true well-wisher, but he truly is your well-wisher because he understands and sees beyond what anyone can see at this moment.
Hmm.
So
Yes.
what a wonderful person to surrender to,
I
that
think
under,
sorry. Go
that truly understands our needs. You know,
ahead.
yeah. You were mentioning something.
Just because you were mentioning along the same lines, I was thinking dependence leads to surrender, or dependence is like a subset of surrender, which it's very hard for today's generation, day and age, people to digest. But really, sometimes we place our dependence, our faith in so many things like social media, entertainment, people who again will fail us eventually with time, but they really block our natural longing for the Lord. And really, it's like you said, it's love and dependence, where love, it's showing the truest meaning of love, which is like deep emotional longing for the Lord, like deep emotional longing of the bird for her mother, for the calf for her mother, and for the wife for her husband. It's like helpless. I'm totally dependent on you, Lord, who will never fail me, who will always, no matter what, protect me spiritually. So yeah, that yearning is based out of true meaning, and true meaning of devotion, true meaning of love.
There's something that you said is really interesting. Um, when we are dependent on someone and that brings out a better us, then
Hmm.
that dependence is actually a beautiful form of surrender.
Hmm.
Okay. Because we are codependent on
Yeah.
different things. Even in a family unit, it's not like we can just totally be, we're social
Yes.
beings We're
Yes.
dependent on each other for emotions, for support. Why do we have friends? Why do we want to do things together? Why do we want to go together? Why do we want to live together? Why do we want to raise children together? It's
True.
because companionship is a kind of dependency, right?
Mm-hmm.
Vacuums that we're trying to fill. But when that dependency actually starts to complete us in a way that it improves us, makes us a better us or a better me, then that dependency actually is beautiful. And that's the kind of dependency that we're talking about in this particular verse.
Yeah.
Because a baby bird being dependent on the mother is actually becoming a
Hmm.
better bird, a stronger bird, a healthier bird.
Yeah.
Um, and similarly, that kind of dependency where there is there is acknowledgement of an individuality, but at the same time, the beauty of being codependent, being happy, and encouraging to do what, and that spirit comes when the center of this becomes the Lord, or
Yes.
center of this becomes service.
Yes.
When
Yes.
each of us are actually trying to serve each other in that mood, that dependency is very beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Keeping Krishna at center, like you said.
Yeah.
It
Oh,
reminds me of how Srila Prabhupada always says when we are chanting, when we are doing meditation, we keep Krishna at the center, but cry out like a child helplessly. So, yeah, these analogies really help because I have a 3-year old and she cries her lungs out when she wants me, and then I just cannot ignore her. Sometimes I ignore her, but then I know when she really needs me. So,
yeah.
yeah, and you're right. These are very practical examples that we can associate with.
Yeah, there's the last one. Would you like to read
Yeah,
the
sure.
last 27th verse?
27. Yeah. He says, O my Lord, my Master, I am wandering throughout this material world as a result of my fruitive activities. Therefore, I simply seek friendship in the association of your pious and enlightened devotees. My attachment to my body, wife, children, and home is continuing by the spell of your external energy, but I wish to be attached to them no longer. Let my mind, my consciousness, and everything I have be attached only to you.
That's quite a strong prayer. But this is a prayer of someone that's at the end of his life.
Yes. Yeah.
You know,
Yes.
he's at a junction in his life where uh, it's this body is coming to an end. So the relationships of this body are coming to an end. He's making a transmigration. He's leaving this body. And at that moment, he's praying that, at this time, my attachment I have to this body itself, to my wife, to my children, all the external relationships, let it cease now.
Mm-hmm.
Let all of
And who
this.
better than him can understand that because he had a son who left his body and the son came back for a couple of minutes and said, "Which father are you?" So he understands it's really well.
Right, exactly. And at the same time, now when in this life, as Vritrasur, when his mind and all of that is coming to an end, he is now saying that, okay, let all of this relationships come to a standstill, and
Mm-hmm.
let my mind, my consciousness, and everything I have. So three things he emphasizes here: my mind, my consciousness, and everything I have be attached only to you.
So mind, consciousness, and everything I have related to my body. So again, mind, body, and every my consciousness. So
Every,
again, he's surrendering everything to his mind, body, and consciousness. Beautiful. Yeah. It's yeah. You're right. He's not. When I was reading it, I was like, for the first time, I was like, is he's rejecting all the relationships out of coldness? But then I also realized this was his almost last phase of life, and he just wants to serve the Lord, like we read in the first verse, and wish to see, everything falling according to Krishna's plan. So Indra cutting his throat, he almost leaving his life, was Krishna's plan. And that's the true test of our life, like especially when we are right there about to leave our body, and he's saying, okay, I don't want anything else, I just want service to you. So talking about love from the previous verse, which encompasses all the four verse, I think love, he has so much love for the Lord. We can see that he's willing to surrender everything, his body, through his body, mind, and consciousness. And that love is measured by the selfless service. It's not measured by social status, not like we feel that how many number of likes we'll get, or not measured by the happiness of having climbing up the ladder, a corporate ladder. So love is truly truly pure when you measure it by service, especially keeping Krishna at the center. And
That
yeah.
that is truly beautiful. Beautiful. There was this a quote that I read by Sri Chinmoy,
Hmm.
and it says that surrender is a journey from the outer turmoil to your inner peace.
Hmm. Wow.
And I found that, this whole journey that um, Vritrasura actually had was basically, it started off with an outer turmoil, but
So
it
much.
truly led him to inner peace.
Hmm.
And I really thought that it kind of just tied this whole thing in together, that someone who is surrendered will feel the inner peace.
Hmm. True. Yeah.
So, eh, surrender is such a deep topic. Um, it is, it may be a very simple form of word, but it's a very complex emotion. Um,
It
and
is.
like, you know, I think in practical sense, I would think that what Oprah Winfrey and Radhanath Swami said in terms of surrender, first of all, it's not about giving up, but it's about letting go of what you can control. And if we decide to do that from moment to moment situation in our life, then we can truly achieve from that outer turmoil to inner peace, which really comes from the space of being truly surrendered.
Beautifully put it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I hope to connect with you again
Oh, I'm
next.
excited. Looking forward as well.
Okay. Take care. Bye bye.
Thank you. Tune into Spirit Talks.